Chapter 11. The Magician. Hugo finished putting on his tuxedo. He rubbed the buttons and admired how smooth and shiny they were. Catching his reflection in the mirror, he stared for a moment. He thought that he looked almost grown up. The Mealeses had emptied out a small storage room in the back of their apartment, and now that room belonged to Hugo. The French Film Academy, through the intervention of René Tabard, arranged for money to be given to the Mealy's family, and some of that money went into furnishing Hugo's room. There was a small workbench at one end, and it was covered in little mechanical creatures made out of clockworks and magic tricks of all shapes and sizes, which Hugo had made himself. The school year had begun again, and Hugo had a desk for doing homework. His shelves were covered in books, and he had many souvenirs from the Paris World's Fair, which he and Isabel had attended months earlier. His father's notebook was safe inside a box in his bedside table. His floor was littered with drawings. He had a little drawer just for the ticket stubs of the movies he and Isabel saw together. In the darkness of a new cinema that opened in a nearby neighbourhood, Hugo was able to travel backward through time and see dinosaurs and pirates and cowboys, and he saw the future with robots and cities so gigantic they blocked out the sky. He flew in aeroplanes and crossed the ocean in ships. In the dark of the movie theatre, he first saw jungles, oceans and deserts. He wanted to visit them all in real life. In one corner of the room stood the automaton, which Hugo and Papa George had repaired to perfection. Hugo stuffed his pockets with little magic tricks and cards as he usually did, checked his railroad watch and knocked on Isabel's door. She opened the door wearing a white dress that seemed to glow. In the living room, George Mealy's had on a tuxedo with his black celestial cape, which had been lovingly mended and cleaned by his wife, and was now as bright and colourful as the day it was made, and she wore a dress that sparkled like water. Etienne soon arrived, wearing a beautiful black tuxedo and a brand new eye patch. Hugo picked up the invitation that lay on the table. The French Film Academy invites you to join us for an evening celebrating the life and work of cinema legend George Méliès. 2 gleaming motor cars pulled up to the doors of their apartment building, and everyone headed outside. "Oh, my camera," said Isabel. "I almost forgot." She raced back to her room and got the black and silver camera her godparents had given to her for her birthday. "Will you carry some extra film for me tonight?" she asked Hugo as she handed him the rolls, which he stuffed into his pocket. "And I've been meaning to give you this." She then handed Hugo a photo she had taken of him with his old friends Antoine and Louis. They all had their arms around one another's necks and they were laughing. "Thanks," said Hugo. He smiled and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Isabel adjusted the camera and the key on its chain around her neck so they hung perfectly. Outside, the drivers helped them into the cars and off they sped to the Film Academy. "It's been a very long time since I've been here," said the old man as they neared their destination. "Maybe I'll ask to see the picture of Prometheus I painted when I was young." "You painted that picture, Papa George?" said Hugo, amazed. "I thought it was of Prometheus. I saw it in the library." "It's still hanging. That's good news. You know the myth then?" The children told him they did. "Then you know Prometheus was rescued in the end. His chains were broken and he was finally set free." The old man squinted one of his eyes and added, "How about that?" Once everyone was seated in the theatre, Monsieur Tabard went to the podium. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he said. "My name is René Tabard, and I will be your host for the evening. We have gathered here tonight in honour of one of our pioneers, George Méliès, who brought magic to the movies. For years his films were believed to be lost. Indeed, Monsieur Méliès himself was believed to be gone. But we have a most wonderful surprise for the world. Monsieur Méliès is here tonight, and not all of his films were destroyed. Thanks to the diligence of one of the students here, Etienne Pruchon, and with help on the weekends from Hugo and Isabel, the 2 brave children who are being raised by Monsieur and Madame Méliès, we went back and checked one last time. starting with one film that we found in our own basement. Etienne, Hugo, and Isabel searched through the vaults and long-closed archives. They took trips to private collections and such strange places as barns and catacombs where their work was richly rewarded. They found old negatives, boxes of prints, and trunks full of decaying film which we were able to save. We now have in our possession over 80 films by Monsieur Méliès, a small fraction of the 500 he produced, but I'm confident in the years to come, even more of his movies will resurface. Tonight, George Méliès, my boyhood hero, is being rediscovered. Now sit back, open your eyes, and be prepared to dream. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the world of George Méliès. The audience cheered and applauded. The lights went down and the orchestra began to play as the curtains opened. Film by film, George's world was projected on screen for the first time in over a decade. And then the last film shown was A Trip to the Moon. Hugo looked at Isabel, tears running down her cheeks in two thin, glimmering lines. The lights came up and the man of honour was then invited up on stage, where he was given a gold laurel wreath to wear as a crown. He stepped to the podium and said to the audience in a proud, emotion-filled voice, "As I look out at all of you gathered here, I want to say that I don't see a room full of Parisians in top hats and diamonds and silk dresses. I don't see bankers and houseworks and store clerks. No, I address you all tonight as you truly are. Wizards, mermaids, travellers, adventurers and magicians. You are the true dreamers." After the gala ended, they all went to a small party in his honour at a nearby restaurant. Isabel took photographs the entire night, and Hugo sat at a table doing magic tricks. A rather sizable crowd soon gathered around Hugo. George Méliès walked over to where Hugo was sitting, put his hand on Hugo's shoulder and said to everyone, "I want you all to remember this moment. I believe this is the first public performance ever given by Professor Alcofrisbaz." Hugo looked up and asked, "Who is Professor Alcofrisbaz?" "You are, my boy." Professor Alcofrisbaz was a character who appeared in many of my films, sometimes as an explorer, sometimes as an alchemist, a person who can turn anything to gold, but mostly he was a magician, and now he has appeared in real life, right here, in this very room. In that moment, the machinery of the world lined up. Somewhere a clock struck midnight, and Hugo's future seemed to fall perfectly into place.